This week, we're taking a short break from the nagging questions plaguing us during this season of uncertainty, and instead looking at some of the questions that Jesus chose to ask people when he walked on the earth. One of the things that I find remarkable about the life of Jesus is that out of all the ways that God could have chosen to spend his time when he came to live among us, Jesus spent an inordinate amount of time in personal conversation asking people questions, which tells us something important about the nature of God. Because asking questions is how you show that you care about somebody, that you're not just interested in telling people who you are, but you're eager to know who they are. Meaning this is a God who is invested in the kind of relational intimacy that only genuine conversation can allow for. Sometimes these questions get really personal, as is the case with today's, when Jesus asks a man who's been an invalid for 38 years, "Do you want to get well?" Jesus meets him at a place called Bethesda, beside a pool which the people of that time believed had healing properties. This is actually a location that's been uncovered by archaeologists, just one of those many little historical details that the writers of the accounts of Jesus' life get absolutely right, helping us to establish our confidence in the reliability of the Bible. In some ways, Jesus' question in John chapter 5 is a surprising one. I mean, the man is lying by a healing pool. He's been suffering for a really long time. All signs point towards the fact that he would like to get well. Living through a global pandemic of such disastrous consequences, it's hard to imagine anybody being offered the choice who wouldn't want to get well. And yet Jesus knows better than to assume that the way things appear on the surface are going to accurately reflect a person's true desires. The more I think about it, do you want to be well, is a question that reveals just how well Jesus really does know the human heart. A few years ago, I found myself in the bizarre experience of watching a romantic comedy about zombies. Bet you didn't see that plot twist coming. But right at the beginning, the protagonist, who is himself a zombie, opens the film with these words: "I'm dead, but that's all right. I've learned to live with it." And those words just struck me as so profoundly true. There are so many things about our lives that deep down we feel uneasy about. We know they are just not healthy, but honestly, it's all right. We've learned to live with it. There could be many reasons for that. Maybe the idea of change is uncomfortable. Maybe it's out of fear that this is as good as it gets. And so we'd rather put up with what we have than get our hopes up, only to be disappointed. Maybe we've learned to like it. Perhaps some of us are stuck in addictions that are slowly consuming our lives, but the truth is we crave the high so much that we can't imagine going without it, even if it is slowly or quickly killing us. For so many of us, the truth is we're not sure if we want to be well. And if that's true in all other areas of life, it's just as true of us spiritually. It's why my husband Vince will often ask people the question, if Christianity was true, would you want it to be? If God was real, would you want to know him? For many, that isn't an easy question to answer. Perhaps we know we are floundering spiritually. Perhaps we have a sense that there could be more to life than just being cosmic, evolutionary accidents, DNA propagating machines, living lives of meaninglessness in a universe of randomness that's only growing colder and darker. But honestly, we're scared to find out more about it, because if there is more, then that might mean having to admit that we are not well and that the consequences for our lives might be profound. In the words of the famous atheist Friedrich Nietzsche, if there is a God, how can I bear not to be him? And yet, if these last few weeks have taught us anything, it has been to starkly remind us of just how not in control we are. Aldous Huxley, author of A Brave New World, once observed that most people live as if death were nothing more than an unfounded rumour. We can't do that anymore. Our news feeds won't let us. Never has it been more abundantly clear that we are not well. The question is, do we want to be? In response to Jesus' question, the man answers that he does want to be well, but on his own he can't even get to the healing pool and he has nobody to help him. In response, Jesus tells him to pick up his mat and walk, and in that instance, the man is immediately healed. Can you imagine how that must have felt? 38 years of being unable to walk, perhaps trapped inside the walls of that same building. And suddenly this man can move freely. He can step out into a world he's never truly seen or explored. He can finally experience life the way he was intended to live it. And that is an experience all of us are made for. As you've had to pull back from life as usual over the last weeks, perhaps that forced distance has given you some perspective on areas of life you realise you've just learned to live with, but in all honesty, you know you're not truly alive. Do you want to be well? If so, then let me commend the person who not only has the means, but the desire to do something about it. In the words of Jesus, it's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance.